Hi, I'm Lisa Barrick, and today we'll be talking to Robin Storey. She's the author of 6 books, and with her positive outlook on life, she can't but help infuse a bit of comedy into her writing. Today we'll be talking about how to use humour in memoir. I love this book. I really enjoyed it. I mean, you're an author of 6 other books, aren't you? And I think it's your positive outlook on life. You just can't help but infusing your stories with humour.
Yes, yes.
Robin, you say that your worldview directed you to be a comedy writer. But how did you get your comedic worldview? What made you be so funny?
I think I was really born with a quirky sense of humour. My mum had a very quirky sense of humour, and I think I've inherited that. And I grew up in a family where there was a lot of witty repartee happening. I have 2 younger brothers, and nowadays when we get together it's kind of like a vaudeville show. We just all, witticisms flying all over the place. So I think that is something really that you're born with, the sort of sense of humour that you have. But also I think I just have that ability to see the absurd and the ridiculous in everyday situations.
It's a good way of coping with life, isn't it?
It is.
Times?
Yes. And even though not all of my books have been comedies, even the ones that are not comedies, I can't help but put a few black comedy moments in them.
Yeah. So what are some of your books? So the comedy ones, it's Perfect Sex. I've got to read that one.
Fiction, of course.
Oh, okay.
Perfect Sex is a romantic comedy. How Not to Commit Murder is a comedy crime. I've got a book of comedy short stories with a kind of a mystery / supernatural theme.
Okay. Yeah.
And those are my main comedy, apart from the memoir that we're talking about today. And then my last 2 books are along a more serious theme. Yeah. I decided that I wanted to get into some more serious, some darker stuff. So.
Well, that's good. You can, as a writer, explore different, genres and things. But like you say, you still have some, sarcastic or ironic or funny moments in there as well. You can't help it, can you?
Yeah, no, I can't.
But what inspired you to want to be a writer in the first place?
Well, I guess like most writers, I was just an absolute bookworm right from when I could learn to read. I didn't ever consider that there'd be any sort of a career in being a writer, so I didn't go down that path when I left school. But I did end up doing some freelance writing. For many, many years I wrote articles for newspapers and magazines. This is pre-digital era.
Yeah. Did you like that?
I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it, and I still do a little bit of it now. So I was going along and I was quite happy being a freelance writer. I had no ambitions whatsoever to write novels. And I suddenly got this idea out of the blue in about 2001 to write a book. And Perfect Sex was actually the first book I wrote, and that was the first book I had an idea for. A book based on my own experiences of internet dating, which back then was in its infancy, and a lot of people regarded it with a lot of suspicion. They just didn't know what sort of people could you possibly meet on the internet. It was usually the province of desperados or deviates.
But now it's the place that people meet.
It is. So I had this story idea to write a book based on internet dating, and I did that. And when I had finished that book, much to my surprise, I found that I'd really enjoyed it.
Right.
But at the end of it, I thought, I've enjoyed this, but it's been such a marathon, I am never going to do this again. But needless to say, I've written 5 others since then.
You got the bug, Robin.
I got the bug.
You got the bug.
Definitely got the bug. It's a bit like having a baby, I think. It's painful while you're going through the process, but as soon as you've finished it, you get such a sense of achievement out of it that you just want to go and do it again.
Wow.
So.
I love this book because you take us on the cancer journey, which is quite a difficult subject, but you do it in such a different way. It's not a difficult journey for the reader. It's actually a very inspiring book and very funny, as well. Like, there were many moments where I was cracking up.
That's good. Good.
It's real, it's funny, it's sad, all at once.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to write about such a challenging life story?
Well, initially it was, I didn't think, when I was first diagnosed, the last thought in my mind was to actually write about it. But I started to write a journal about my feelings and thoughts because that just helped me to express them and to make sense of how I was feeling and thinking. I have an online journal. It's Penzu, which is an online journal. You just go in there and you can put all your thoughts on there, and it's all encrypted. I've had that for many years. So I went on and I started writing my thoughts and feelings in my journal.
Okay.
And
did that help you deal with the emotional side of
things?
It
definitely did, because a lot of the time you're not even sure what emotions you're feeling because there's so many different emotions happening at the same time.
Yeah.
So when I then went to write down how I was feeling, it just helped me to make sense of it and to clarify it. And I guess it wasn't until about, I suppose, 2 or 3 months into the whole experience when I suddenly thought, you know what, there's probably a book in this. And then I went on and I thought, well, okay, let's just see what's already been done in that field. And I went on to Amazon and I looked at cancer memoirs, particularly breast cancer memoirs, and there are a lot of cancer memoirs is actually quite a big genre.
Right. Okay.
And then I looked at breast cancer memoirs in particular, and even though there were some humorous books, in proportion to the serious ones, they weren't many.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, it's such an intense thing for someone to read about someone else's cancer journey. I thought, well, what about if I did it from a humorous point of view? Because already I had found so many humorous things just because of the way, I could see the ridiculous things that had happened to me. So I thought, why don't I write it from a humorous point of view? And then I thought, well, writing the whole thing from my own point of view could be very intense, suffocating, could get boring for the person reading it. So I thought, why don't I also include some experiences from other cancer sufferers as well, just to kind of widen the perspective a bit and get a bit more interest in it. I just thought it would lead to a more well-rounded and interesting book.
Yeah. I think it does too. I mean, I love the way you weave in other people's thoughts and their processes as well. It's sort of like a compare and contrast sort of thing. And it's an honest approach. It's just because you feel this way, other people might not.
Exactly.
It's
everyone's
really
experience is very different.
Yeah.
But I did find that the one thing that we did have in common with all the other people that I spoke to was we were all able to have a sense of humour and look at it and find the funny side of it.
Yeah.
I think that's a very important part of surviving the whole experience.
That's right. Because also, what are the statistics with breast cancer now? It's almost like, every second person has gone through.
Well,
some
exactly.
form of
It's
cancer.
1 in 8 now.
Wow.
It used to be 1 in 16 and it's gone down to 1 in 8. And that's quite a low statistic. And that's the reason why you will find that most people will either directly know someone who's had breast cancer or know of someone who's had breast cancer.
Yeah.
It's very common.
Yeah, that's right. They say laughter is the best medicine. Did you consciously set out to, use laughter and humour in your healing, or is it because you're just very funny anyway?
I didn't consciously set out to do that at all, but in every experience, I recount in the book quite a few experiences where I'm just there and I'm thinking of all these funny scenarios, but they did actually occur to me at the time.
Yeah.
So it's just the way I am. I just couldn't help seeing the funny side of things.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think it can help us all get through so many situations.
Yes.
You also say, I love this, you say, joy is everywhere when you start looking for it.
That's very
do
true.
you think that this attitude and, you talk about meditation and all that, do you think that played a huge part in your healing as well?
I think Meditation, I'm still gripping with that.
Okay.
I'm trying to get a daily practice in that, and the most I can get is 5 minutes in the morning, lying in my recliner in the sun, and I figure if that's all I can do, then that's better than nothing.
Oh, Robin, was it mindfulness?
It's more mindfulness than actual meditation.
That's right.
Mindfulness being aware of your present surroundings, not only where you are and what you're doing, but being aware of your thoughts and emotions at the time, and being very non-judgmental about them. And this enables you to be able to step aside and not react instinctively to things, but be able to control your thoughts and emotions rather than just be controlled by them. And I have found that very useful for me. For example, I did give an example in the book. I often will get this feeling of anxiety arise when I think, oh, is my breast cancer going to come back? This is a fear that's very common to all breast cancer survivors, and it doesn't matter whether you're a 10, 20, 30 year survivor. You do get that, and when I do feel that fear, I can look at it and I can say, well, okay, at the moment I'm feeling anxious about my cancer returning, but this is not helpful for me to feel like that, and I don't want to keep feeling anxious, so I'm going to stop that and think about something else that's positive. So that's one way that mindfulness can help you. You can actually control your emotions that way. So,
do you think by keeping a journal throughout the process, it enabled you to capture those thoughts and things that you were having immediately? Would you have forgotten a lot of things if you didn't keep that journal?
Oh, definitely. I think keeping a daily, and sometimes it wasn't daily. Sometimes it was just nothing really to report. Maybe it was only when I felt the need to record things. But yes, definitely, because that journal helped me in the writing of the book. I went back through all my journal entries, and that informed the writing of the book, because I basically decided to do it as a chronological story right from the time I got the phone call, come in and have a further tests right through to the very end when my treatment had finished. So by having the journal, I was able to then remember how I'd felt. It's amazing, even now, it's over 2 years since all of that happened. It's amazing how much I've already forgotten.
Really?
I'd have to go back and look and read the book again, or go through the journals to actually remember my emotions.
Oh, I love that, Robin. I love that. It's almost as if, you're a whole different person, and the experience, even though it was terrible, it enriched your life in some way as well.
And you get through it and you move on, because you don't want to be constantly defined by the fact that you had breast cancer. You move on. Everything's fine with me now. I'm all clear, and so you move on to the next phase of your life.
I love how you're also very honest. You're very real in sharing your feelings and emotions. Was that hard to do, or because you used the journal that?
It was hard. I think it's always hard when you put yourself out there in your writing. I think even when you write fiction, you still there's you in the book, and so I think with fiction it's hard, but especially with a memoir it is very hard, because you're just putting all of your thoughts and feelings out there, and it can be a case of, are people going to think I'm a bit crazy? But you do it because...
I'm thinking of you. I can't help thinking of your perfect sex book. Even though I haven't read it, I want to read it, because I think, it's like you write what you know.
Although I do have to say, all the experiences in that and people were totally fictional.
Okay, cool.
But they were kind of, I guess, there were parts of people that I knew taken in and combined with parts of other things, and then... things that people had told me, so they're all... And that's the beauty, isn't it, of using different aspects and different things and weaving it all together into even one character or one situation. Right. It's really good. So definitely.
I think, what other advice or tips can you give to people out there who may want to write their memoir and they want to use a bit of humour in it? What, any ideas or any advice?
Well,
there?
I would say just go ahead and do it. Because if it's you that you're writing about, then no holds barred. I mean, you can say whatever you like about yourself.
Because, Robin, some people think, how far do I go? How much detail do I have to give? Or are they worried that, they might come across as being insensitive? Or do you even care about that? Well,
as I said, I think when you're writing about yourself, you can say what you like. I mean, people can't get hurt, can they? Because you are writing about yourself. And I think part of the doing that is just a self-deprecating humour. You're making fun of yourself, but not in a cruel way, in a way that makes people say, yeah, I can totally identify with that. I've felt that way myself, or I've done that myself.
Yeah.
And I think with something like breast cancer, I have had a couple of people say to me, well, you know, I don't think there's anything very funny about breast cancer. And some people are in that space themselves where they just can't see anything amusing. And that's why in the introduction to the book, I do say that in no way am I minimising the trauma that people go through, because we all go through trauma in, you know, some more so than others.
That's right. And we all just deal with it differently too, don't we?
Yeah, so by that I'm saying, you know, that I definitely am not minimising other people's trauma at all, but this is just the way I saw it. It's funny that my father even said to me, I don't think there's anything funny about breast cancer. I thought, well, okay, you haven't been there, and I think there's something funny about it, so there you go. Plenty of things funny about it.
So the lesson is, it's your book, write what you bloody well want.
That's right, that's right. And I think with humour, I think the only thing I could say about humour is you can't force it. So you can't just think, oh, well, I'm going to write a funny memoir, and so just put in a few jokes here and there and try and make it like a stand-up comedy routine. It really has to come from your own worldview and how you see things.
From the heart,
And if I mean, I think everybody does have a sense of humour, although some people give a good, you know, sort of appearance of not. I think everyone has their own brand of humour and their own sense of humour, so you just have to go with what's natural for you.
I love that. That's great advice.
Yeah.
I also love how it's really interesting how you weave your themes throughout the book. Like, I love this idea of embracing uncertainty, and you sort of talk about it a little bit in the beginning, and then something happens at the end which I don't want to give away, and which is all about embracing uncertainty.
Yes.
You know, like, did you plan your book, or you just, you know, let it flow as it happened? Did you sit down and think, right, I'm going to do a structure and an introduction and blah, 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 blah?
Well, I am a planner with my books, and I did actually sit down and do an outline of this book. That was easy to do because it was basically chronological, so I just went through all the different stages of my experience, and then at the end I ended up finishing it off with my skydive experience, which I would never have done if I hadn't had cancer. So I thought that was a good way to end the book.
Yeah.
So I did structure it. I felt that was useful for me to be able to structure.
Because some people agonise over, you know, should I start at this point now, go into backstory? You know, I think people agonise over it because there's so many different ways to write it. It really just depends on what your theme or what you want to focus on in the book. Really.
Well, there is, I guess. I mean, I could have started with the end and then gone back and done it as a flashback. So I think it really just depends on how you want to write it.
Yeah.
But I guess from my point of view, I thought if I start it with the phone call, you know, the dreaded phone call.
Yeah, I love that.
It gives a sense of the reader is going on the journey with you. Oh, how's it going to go? You know, how's the test results going to be? It sets up
the conflict immediately.
Yes.
It's the conflict. It's the problem.
Yes. Yeah.
You know?
And all of the ups and downs that you experience. And as I say, embracing uncertainty. Well, cancer is just one huge uncertainty, and you seem to spend your whole life just waiting for test results.
Yeah.
And that's one of the most, you know, I think one of the worst parts of it at all, and that whole uncertainty of it.
Something about being a full-time waiting in rooms.
Yes.
You know,
well, breast cancer is a full-time job, basically.
Yeah.
It seems to be at the time. You're
That's
rushing back and forth for appointments and whatever. And I do mention a book by Susan Jeffers that I found really, really useful called Embracing Uncertainty.
Okay.
And just being able to embrace, because not only cancer, I mean, everyone's life's uncertain. You don't know what's going to happen from one day to the next. And you have to learn, I think, how to go along with that rather than resisting it.
Yeah. Robin, I love the message in your book. You know, you sort of talk about the cancer journey gives you a glimpse of your own death, you know, which is scary. But I think the message is that the whole experience is just a powerful incentive to, I think these are your words, powerful incentive to live life in the moment, and all that mindfulness that you were talking about. You know, what do you want out of life, and just go for it.
Yes, definitely.
I think, did having breast cancer change your life and make it even more positive? And are you even funnier now? Or, you know?
Well, it definitely changed my life. I don't think there'd be anyone who had cancer who would say it hasn't changed their life in some way or another. And I think most people would say it makes you sit down and think, oh, geez, what do I really want to do out of the rest of my life? Because it is a glimpse of your own death. It could have been completely different.
Yeah.
I could have had a death sentence rather than an early intervention.
Yeah.
And it did give me the courage to do something I had wanted to do for a long time, which was to become a full-time author. I had the means to do that, so I retired from my job and did that, and I wrote, and I am still a full-time writer now, and I love it. I love the whole writing.
Yeah, you're just so consistent, and so that's what I admire about you. You know, you're just so consistent, and I really aspire to be like you.
Well, you know, some days I'm not really as consistent as others, but yes, it definitely did force me to take that plunge, which I probably wouldn't have taken if I hadn't had breast cancer.
Yeah.
To say, right, this is what I want to do, and this is what I'm going to do right now. And most of the people that I spoke to had that same experience.
Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our viewers or our listeners about the writing journey, or if they want to write a memoir and using humour in any other? You've given us so many wonderful tips today.
I think with the memoir, I guess it's I suppose a memoir can be is usually just a part of your life, isn't it, rather than just a whole life story. So I think it's about finding that period of your life that you do want to write about and delving in as deeply as you can into that experience to get the most out of it in your book, and that will probably mean delving into some unpleasant experiences. Yeah. But that's what it's all about.
Do you recommend getting support throughout the process? Like, did you seek support?
I did have one session of telephone counselling with someone from Breast Cancer Queensland. Yeah. And I felt that was all I really needed. I had a lot of support from family and friends, and I didn't really need to have any further counselling, but there were plenty of options available. Yeah, and I would definitely recommend it, because some women just go through a horrific time. Yeah. And you know, you really do need to get that. So Robin, I'll hold it up for the viewers again. I just want to thank you for coming here today and sharing your story. I love talking to you. I always learn so much, about the whole writing process. And, thank you for having me. It's been really fun. Yeah, thank you. It's a real book. It's a raw book. It's an honest book, and it's a very funny book. So please go and buy it. Where can people find you, and where can they get the book? They can get the book on Amazon. If you type in the title, it will come up as an ebook or a print version. Okay. They can find me. My website is storylines, storey-lines.com. That's my website. That will have information about all my novels and where to buy them. Okay. And we can't have the interview without saying that you have just a fabulous last name, can we? Yes. So everyone says, I know everyone says that, but Robin Storey. I wish I had that last name. Well, it was actually not the name I was born with. It was my married name that I decided to keep when I divorced, because I thought, well, you know what, this is such a good name for a writer. Could come in handy. So, exactly. So that could be another story. Yes. How you got your name. Yes, so. Exactly. Thanks again, Robin. Really appreciate it. Yeah, thank you, Lisa. It's been fun. Thanks. Or have a mastectomy. Is that mastectomy? Have a mastectomy. Yes. I know it's a difficult one to get your head around. I'm embarrassed. And today we'll be talking about making the breast of it. What's the subtitle? Breast Cancer Stories of Humour and Joy. Humour and joy. That's what we want. A bit of humour and joy. Stay tuned.